Right. I think what Mitch McConnell said, though, that does strike a chord is when he said it feels like it's become fashionable. And that's what worries me.
In other parts of the world. He didn't say it here.
Well, no, he said he's worried that it's going to become, at least some members of the House, but it seems it's become more fashionable in Europe. That's what I worry about with anti-Semitism. It seems like it has become fashionable to be anti-Jewish again. And
we are so strongly against anti-Semitism. We have said that before. I don't know how many times we need to continue to say that in the face of, I think, some Republicans who just want to use this as a wedge issue, but don't necessarily call out anti-Semitism on their own side.
That is the co-chair of the House Progressive Caucus, as House Democrats have delayed a vote on a resolution condemning anti-Semitism. That measure was seen as a rebuke of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's controversial comments about some American support for Israel. House Democratic sources have told Fox News they are working on a broader measure which addresses other forms of bigotry as well. Meanwhile, the New York Times is reporting this, quote, "Formal condemnation of anti-Semitism has touched off a furious debate between older House Democrats and their young liberal colleagues over whether Representative Omar is being singled out for unfair treatment over her statements on Israel," end quote. Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell sounds off on some of the rhetoric used by some new members of the House. Watch.
This is a good time for America to think again about anti-Semitism. It seems to be more fashionable in Europe. It seems to be more fashionable in this country, regretfully, among at least some members of the new class in the House. We need to stand up to it in every way we possibly can.
Just about an hour ago, the House Democratic Caucus chair hit back.
There's not a rise of anti-Semitism in the House of Representatives. There's a rise of anti-Semitic behavior and activity and violence in the country. And it's irresponsible for Mitch McConnell to try to politicize this issue. And when has he ever said anything about the hateful remarks that continue to flow out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? So we're not going to be lectured by Mitch McConnell on anything.
Wow, that's a lot, Jessica. I didn't realize that anti-Semitism was per generation. So you have older House Democrats arguing with younger millennial House Democrats about whether or not Omar should be called out on anti-Semitism and if they need to broaden out a resolution beyond that. Why?
Well, there are two issues at play here. There's an anti-Semitism question and then there's criticism of Israel. And that's what Representative Omar has made clear that she thought that she was doing. And
this time.
Yes, and she apologized before that she didn't know about the Benjamin's trope.
She's apologized many times, even before she got into the House.
Yeah, absolutely.
She apologizes. No, we're on the record with that.
But that is a discussion that we were having at the height of the 2016 Democratic primary. Bernie Sanders'
Why are we having this discussion is my question.
Because there are a number of people in the Democratic Party who do not feel that we as a nation are fair to Palestinians who are being ruled over by a terrorist organization.
Without saying anti-Semitic tropes?
Can they talk about that?
Can she do that?
I hope so, and I hope that this will lead to a more productive conversation about that, because as an American Democrat and a Jew, I would personally really like to have that conversation and to have it openly and honestly.
How much patience do you have for Representative Omar? Because JCRC of Minnesota is out of patience. Their director says that they've done enough teaching and conversing with her. They're out of patience. So
I am not in charge of Representative Omar. I think that she will get a little more time. I think this bigotry proposal will be a nod to her to say we're not making this just about you, but the issue generally. But I want to say that what Representative Jeffries said is very important, that he doesn't have the time to be lectured by Mitch McConnell. You have the President of the United States and his son tweeting out pictures of Hillary Clinton on a pile of cash. Jim Jordan tweeting about Tom Steyer with a money sign instead of an S there. The George Soros criticisms. All of those contained classic anti-Semitic tropes that, yes, Representative Omar should have known better to say it's all about the Benjamins. But, you know, Steve King still sits there. And I know that he lost his committee assignments, but he's been reelected 8 times. Why hasn't she lost that
one House Foreign Affairs Committee assignment, do you think?
I believe that Nancy Pelosi sees this. She's a new member of Congress. She's not someone who has been a proven anti-Semite like Steve King.
You know what I think she sees? She sees the support that she's getting within those chambers that were willing to call out Steve King so quickly. Michael?
I'd like briefly to disagree with everything that Jessica has just said.
Oh my goodness.
I was very polite. So are you done?
Very, very quickly. To say that we're unfair to the Palestinians who are ruled over by a terrorist organization.
I said that was their perception.
They are ruled over by a terrorist organization that they elected. To compare Representative Omar's comments to other people's comments is absurd. To say that any criticism of politicians taking money deals in the same sort of anti-Semitism as Representative Omar.
What about the George Soros stuff then, Michael?
Wait,
George Soros is a very terrible man.
When we go
That's
down
not anti-Semitic
the road
to say that.
Whataboutism, everyone immediately turns off because that's how everybody deals with all of these arguments today. It's almost like two wrongs make a right. So somebody says something and they say, well, what about when the person on your team did the same thing? We don't make any progress when we do that. I wish I could outlaw that altogether. I think what Mitch McConnell said, though, that does strike a chord is when he said it feels like it's become fashionable. And that's what worries me.
In other parts of the world. He didn't say it here.
Well, no, he said he's worried that it's going to become, at least some members of the House, but it seems it's become more fashionable in Europe. That's what I worry about with anti-Semitism. It seems like it has become fashionable to be anti-Jewish again in some corners.
Well, and sometimes that's why the whataboutism comes afoot, right? Like I would ask Hakeem Jeffries, third in power in the House of Representatives right now, about his comments that the president is the grand wizard of the KKK, and might he have wanted to use some different words because he is a leader and people listen to him.
And what about whataboutism?
Can't stand it.
Steve King. Well, if you make that comparison, Steve King made his comments about white nationalism. He then went on the House floor. He condemned the evil ideology of white nationalism. He voted to rebuke himself. What happened with Ilhan Omar? She defends her comments. She defends her comments to Nita Lowey, her own Democrat colleague. She says, I'm just asking questions about U.S. foreign policy. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says the exact same thing. But it is not simple criticism of U.S. foreign policy to accuse Israel of hypnotizing the world and praying that Allah awaken people to the evil of Israel.
And
that's very different.
And there's also another issue here at play as well for Democrats, and it is this schism between the old guard of Democrats and these incoming freshmen like Tlaib, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I really think that's where the base of the Democratic Party is. And I talked about this after the midterm elections, that this is going to be the challenge that Nancy Pelosi faces, because you have this increasing progressive caucus that she's going to try to appease, while also not taking the Democrat Party off the deep end to a point where they are out of sync with the majority of Americans. And I think on this issue, the majority of Americans look at this and say Omar was wrong. I think even something like the Green New Deal, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's embarrassing mistakes with releasing her frequently asked questions document, talking about cows farting and giving jobs or giving economic security to people that are unwilling to work. Those are the consequences you pay when you empower people like this who are so green and not ready for prime time.
One thing to Melissa, because you're right. If your house is on fire, you don't really care about a burn mark from a fire that they successfully put out down the way. Your house is on fire. You just want that to stay. It's not about so I do get what you're saying. That whataboutism. It distracts.
It does. It doesn't. So the thing the other person didn't do wasn't right either. That doesn't justify what's happening right now.
All right, we'll move on. The president is slamming House Democrats